Right before the NBA trade deadline, Kristaps Porzingis requested a trade, and if he wasn't traded, he would go play in Latvia. This changed the Knicks' future completely because they no longer had their franchise star, had to resort to a new plan of action. What if this scenario never happened and Kristaps Porzingis was actually traded during the 2017 NBA draft when his value was the greatest? Phil Jackson was seriously shopping Kristaps Porzingis after he skipped his exit meeting because, in his words, check out this clip.
And what would be good for the club? Why would you do that?
Future?
Every single Knicks fan, including myself, was going absolutely crazy and cussing out Phil Jackson left and right. But looking back on it, what would actually have happened if the Knicks traded away Kristaps Porzingis? The NBA had never ever seen a player like Kristaps, so everyone had interest in the big man when they saw he was available. The Celtics were the front runners in the sweepstakes and were willing to give up the 3rd overall pick to make the trade happen. The Knicks wanted the 3rd pick in the 2017 NBA draft, the Nets' 2018 first round pick, Jaylen Brown and Jay Crowder. The Celtics were not willing to give up all these young pieces, but they did say they had an offer in place to get the 7th pick from the Timberwolves, which would then give the Knicks the 3rd and 7th picks in the 2017 NBA draft, ultimately for Kristaps Porzingis. The Knicks declined this deal, so to compromise, a deal that would work for both sides would be the Knicks getting the 3rd pick, 7th pick, and James Young, the Celtics getting Kristaps Porzingis, and the Timberwolves getting Avery Bradley, Jaylen Brown, and Jay Crowder. This trade works for all 3 sides. I don't see there being any issues because it gives each team what they want. Now I'm going to go team by team, starting with the Knicks, to explain how they would fare from after this trade went down to current day, so let's get right into it. To begin, Knicks have the 3rd, 7th, and 8th overall picks in the 2017 NBA draft, where they would no doubtedly take one of the biggest busts in the past decade with the 3rd pick, Josh Jackson. A classic Knicks move. Phil Jackson was so high on Josh Jackson, and Josh Jackson was probably high as well. That man's got some issues. However, on the bright side, they were also huge fans of Lauri Markkanen out of Arizona and believed he could replace Kristaps Porzingis, which at the time seemed laughable, but he has proven to be a great young NBA player when he's healthy. Finally, with the 8th overall pick, the Knicks would still take Frank Ntilikina, who teams around the league won't even give up a pick in the 30 to 40 range for, so he's basically a bust. So going into the 2017-2018 season, the Knicks would have a starting lineup of Frank Ntilikina, Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, and Enes Kanter. Also with no Phil Jackson going into the season, because he did get fired by Dolan, probably the only good move Dolan's ever made as the owner. This team is nowhere even close to making the playoffs and would honestly win only like 23 games the entire season. This would put them with the 3rd best odds in the draft lottery. However, the team who had the 3rd most ping pong balls, the Mavericks, actually fell down to the 5th pick in the lottery. Since this is the case, every team would move down one slot after the Knicks, and the draft order would be all over the place. The one piece of information to keep in mind is that the Grizzlies would still be in the top 5 to take Jaren Jackson Jr., so the Knicks would be left with the choice of Trae Young, Mo Bamba, or Colin Sexton. The Knicks' new front office, led by Scott Perry, thankfully were high on Trae Young, and believed him and Ntilikina would make up a great backcourt. Also, the Knicks don't have their own 2nd round pick, but they have the Bulls' 2nd round pick, so they are still in a position to get their same guy, Mitchell Robinson. Coming out of this draft, the Knicks would have a lineup of Trae Young, Damian Dotson, Josh Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, and Mitchell Robinson. This roster immediately becomes one of the greatest young cores in the entire NBA, and this team will not make the playoffs, but definitely has a chance to in a few years and run the table. Going into the 2018-2019 season, this team will not be as good because Trae Young was in a slump for a good portion of the beginning of the season, Mitchell Robinson took some time to have an impact on the Knicks, and Lauri Markkanen was hurt for a little less than half of the games this past season. This team would win only about 29 games, so the Knicks have to play the Nets, Celtics, 76ers, and Raptors more than twice a season since they're in the same division as them. With a record of 29-53, the Knicks would be tied with the Hawks, but since the Hawks are without Trae Young, they would definitely have a worse record than the Knicks, so ultimately they would have the 6th best odds in the draft lottery. Sadly, the Knicks would be in the same position as the Washington Wizards, so they would end up sliding down to the 9th overall pick in the draft. This shouldn't come as a surprise though, because the Knicks are always unlucky when it comes to the NBA draft lottery. With the 9th pick, the Knicks would select Cam Reddish, who intrigued the Knicks front office because of the amount of talent he has. Other than this, the Knicks would still take their second round pick, Ignas, and sadly, RJ Barrett would not be a Knick. Now that we're up to date, I can say that for a fact, a lineup of Trae Young, Cam Reddish, Josh Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, and Mitchell Robinson is the scariest lineup going forward. This young core could easily persuade Kevin Durant to sign with the Knicks. The Knicks are still on Tim Hardaway Jr.'s and Courtney Lee's contracts, so they would either have to trade Josh Jackson and future picks for another max slot, or sign KD alone. If KD comes into the mix here, this team immediately becomes the championship favorite, mark my words. Not the current Knicks, this Knicks team back here. The next team we have is the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have one of the most talented young players in the history of the NBA. Now that the Celtics have semi-destroyed their Eastern Conference Finals team from the past year, Danny Ainge still has the pieces to pull the trigger on Kyrie Irving. So ultimately, the Celtics have Kyrie, Kristaps, and Al Horford. They still have a max contract slot where they would still sign Gordon Hayward because he was too good of a player at the time to pass on. Going into the first game, the Celtics would have a roster of Kyrie, Marcus Smart, Gordon Hayward, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford. This lineup is scary and 100% the favorites to get out of the Eastern Conference. In the first game, sadly, Gordon Hayward still has this devastating injury that keeps him out for the rest of the season. As the season goes on, since KP is in a new environment, he has minor injuries but never tears his ACL against the Bucks. Before the playoffs, Kyrie does hurt his knee, so he is out, and KP cannot carry this team on his own, so the Celtics once again lose in the conference finals to the Cavs. The Celtics roster stays the same going into the 2018-2019 NBA season, except KP is one more year progressed and healthier than ever. The Celtics would be the clear 1 seed in the East with a more developed KP and Kyrie, Al Horford, and Gordon Hayward. The Celtics will easily sweep the Pistons in the first round, and in the second round will have to go up against the 76ers, who they will have no trouble against due to the mismatches on the court and the lack of chemistry of the 76ers. This series definitely will not go to 7 games, but most likely it will go to 6 games. The Celtics then advance to the conference finals, where they will be going up against the Toronto Raptors, the defending champions. However, I believe the Celtics are better at 4 out of the 5 positions on the floor, so I think this series will be very interesting. The series will be the best series we have seen in the past decade, and will definitely go to a Game 7 where it could honestly go either way. Wow, this decision is tough. But for the sake of the video, let's say the Celtics won Game 7. If the Celtics win Game 7 and go up against the Golden State Warriors, who are without KD, with a 70% DeMarcus Cousins, a hobbled Clay, and no depth, the Celtics would definitely win the 2019 NBA Championship. Congratulations to the Boston Celtics. However, I do realize a lot of things could change this outcome, like injuries and team chemistry, but this Celtics team with KP could have easily won the championship this season if everyone stays healthy. Say the Celtics don't win a championship this season. Could they package Hayward with assets to another team to give themselves a chance to pair KD and Kyrie in Boston to make a title run in 2020? This seems very possible, and it would be so interesting to see what would happen. Finally, the Timberwolves. The T-Wolves can no longer execute the Jimmy Butler trade since they don't have the 7th pick, but they do have a ton of young players to fill out the roster and make a playoff run. The Timberwolves stay average through all of this and are fighting for an 8 seed in the Western Conference. None of the players they received will significantly change their team, so they're basically in the same spot that they were, except with Jaylen Brown rather than Robert Covington. Okay, now that I am finally done, I do want to say that this is definitely not completely what would happen because injuries and chemistry can change absolutely everything. But this is the most accurate representation of it, going through the team records and all of that stuff. Tell me who you guys think are the winners from this deal if it were to happen, and also tell me who you guys think lost the deal. It doesn't only have to be one of these 3 teams though, and it can be other teams as well that fell in the draft lottery and stuff like that. Also, tell me if you guys want to see more videos like this, and with that said, I'm out and peace!